Do you ever get the feeling that you should be happier in your business? Maybe you should be making more money by this point, or you should be reaching your goals faster. In this episode, I speak with Ryann Dowdy. Now, Ryann has an extensive background in sales. In fact, she helped businesses make millions of dollars with her sales techniques in the corporate world, and then went on to build incredibly successful businesses in the online space. But she's really started to narrow in her focus on community and the value of authenticity. If you've been feeling stuck or just unhappy in your current business, today's episode is going to help you reveal if this is an external feeling or a true drive inside of you that's making you know it's time to pivot. I know you're going to love today's show, so let's get right into it. All right, everybody. Today, my guest is Ryann Dowdy, and I am so excited to speak with her. She is an absolute expert when it comes to sales, when it comes to a lot of things, actually. But she spent so many years in corporate helping businesses make millions and millions of dollars in sales. But that's actually not entirely what I want to talk to her about today. See, she built this massive community of people wanting to scale their businesses. And in building that community, realized that she was kind of lacking community herself in the ability to be her truest form online. So it became her new mission. And now she truly helps other people by creating this safe space for women to be authentically themselves online. And the more I learn about you, Ryann, the more I'm impressed. So I'm so excited just to dive in and talk about your story, what got you here, and to really share this message of authenticity, which I feel like is just so needed right now. I'm really, really excited. So thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, I am just so excited to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Of course. So let's do this. For anybody who is maybe new and does not know you, can you just give us some background? Because this new pivot, kind of teaching sales to really digging into community isn't really the first pivot you made, because you made the pivot from corporate to the online space. So if you could just take some time kind of sharing that journey and what led you to this point, I would love that.
Yes. Thank you for asking. So, as you shared, I spent 15 years in the corporate world in sales. I started selling radio advertising at the age of 21 in Orlando, Florida, and went from individual contributor to eventually, I think, regional sales trainer to national sales trainer to channel sales manager, and eventually wound up retiring from the corporate world as the director of sales for a digital marketing agency here in Kansas City. And even, Abby, at that time, I did not necessarily know that entrepreneurship was what I needed or wanted. I just knew that I woke up going to my dream job and was just not fulfilled, And I wish that I could say, like, I had this realization and then I went and did something about it. No, I had this realization and then I beat myself up over the shame and the guilt that I had over not being happy with what I had, right? I had a good life. I was making good money. My career was good. I had a lot of control that a lot of people I know in corporate jobs do not have. I feel like I had a lot of that, but I still just felt really unfulfilled. So I started networking. I started talking to people and learned about online entrepreneurship. To me, entrepreneurship meant like starting a brick and mortar business, like opening a business. And I wanted no part of that. But once I learned that I could take the skills that I had and leverage a business just based on my expertise, I was like, absolutely, I'm all in for that. I had already been teaching and training sales. I'd been literally trained thousands of sales reps. It just so naturally made sense for me to start a business teaching sales. So that's what I did. And I helped we had a program called the Uncensored Sales Accelerator. And our tagline was that we helped high achieving women leave their 9-to-5 and build profitable businesses. And so these were women who were service providers who, had a really great skill set, but had never really sold anything before. And that was a challenge for them. So I did that for, a few years. And that was wildly successful. And in that, wound up starting a second business in partnership with my business coach at the time, training sales reps. So I went from helping women learn sales so they can leave to training sales reps for online entrepreneurs. And so that was 2021. And then kind of had this like come to Jesus moment in the fourth quarter of 2021 when I realized that I had basically just replaced my corporate job with businesses that were not overly fulfilling. We had really big top line revenue and really small bottom line revenue. And I was stressed out and overwhelmed and overworked. And that's where the be in the room concept came from,
Mm.
where I realized that while I had all of these people around me, I didn't have a place to go and really truly say, like, guys, I'm falling apart here. That was not a room full of people that were potential clients or people who viewed me as a thought leader, to just go and say, hey, I'm struggling and I don't know where to go with this. But in one-on-one conversations with women, I found that I was not alone in that. When I said it in one-on-one conversations, we're like, oh yeah, me too, me too, me too. And because I am an entrepreneur at my core, I was like, this is it. This is the thing, is building a community for women that creates this safe space for successful women to have conversations that are not comfortable to have elsewhere, is really what I have been creating since December of 2021.
Oh, that's so amazing. So it sounds like when you made this first initial pivot, you had quite a bit of confidence that you could come into this new space and do something great. Like, were there fears attached to that? And in the same vein, like
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just going to ask the question
Yeah.
because this is what my mind goes to, is like, pivot again. Like, that sounds scary. So, like, one, was there that fear? And then two, what did you kind of do with it in order to enable you to keep moving forward despite just the fears of pivoting?
Yeah. Really great question. So yes, I was terrified. So when I was in the corporate world, I was the breadwinner in my family. I had a 6-figure salary. It was not an easy decision. Like, the thought that I could even replace my, my corporate salary kind of blew my mind a little bit. So there was a lot of fear. And in all this, so so it's 2017 where I have my realization. It's 2018, I tell the world I'm going to start a business. It's 2019 when that business actually starts making money.
Yeah.
And in all of this, I get pregnant again. So at the end of 2018, I find out I'm pregnant. So it put a timeline on things for me, to be honest with you, because I was like, I'm not going back to work after this baby is born, period. End of story. I will figure it out. I will do whatever it takes. And sometimes I think that pressure was really what I needed, because I was starting to pick up momentum. I would make a couple $1,000s here and a couple $1,000s there, and I'd get a client, but then like weeks or months would go by without anything else. Right. And I was like, this is not going to work. Like, this isn't a side hustle anymore. This is like, it needs to feed our family. And so, I think the timeline and realizing that, like, this is my shot, this is my runway, make it happen, was what really drove me more than anything. And, I wish I could say that, like, the fear went away, but I don't think, and you can tell me your experience, I don't think the fear ever really goes away.
Mm-mm.
Right. So, business number 1, wildly successful. Business number 2, wildly successful. And I honestly think it is scarier burning something down that is successful than leaving something that you hate. Right. Like, I would say burning down 2 successful businesses was more terrifying to me than leaving that job. Because at that point in time, I needed to make $120,000, $130,000 a year. I could do that. I could do that myself if I needed to. And I knew that. So now we're talking, the stakes are higher. I've got a team, all of this other stuff. And so then the fear becomes like, I'm no longer selling business. I'm no longer selling money. I'm now selling community. I'm selling something completely soft. It's, it's more expensive than most communities that I found online. And I did that intentionally. And so there's all this fear of, what are people going to think? There's all the fear of judgment, the fear of failure, the fear of building a community that nobody wants to be a part of. And I'd be lying if I say that I don't feel that every single day. We just opened ticket sales to our first in-person event in September. And I'm terrified that that's not going to sell.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the fear ever goes away. And I think that that's what you do with it, right? Your second part of the question was, what do you do with it? I was like, the difference between me and most people is that I don't let fear drive, right? Like, it's sitting in the passenger seat. It's there. It's maybe a little bit of a backseat driver. I'm driving. And that was the thing that I realized, I think the first time, I made that big leap, was I realized that it wasn't going away. And so I was like, I can let it drive, or I can just let it come along for the ride. So for me, it's along for the ride. I know that it's there. I don't give it a lot of airtime. It's kind of normal at this point in the game, but I'm driving.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. So good. I've talked to actually some of my senior leaders about this before, and we call it the train of emotions.
Yes.
And it's like there's all these different cars on the train, and there's belief, and there's facts, and there's emotion, and there is a place for every single car on the train. But feelings, while they are there and they are an important part of the train, a lot of times they do have to be a little bit further back in the train when belief and truth and all of the other things have to come forward.
100%.
Yes. So, okay, you make this transition from corporate to entrepreneurship, then entrepreneurship to new business entrepreneurship. So this is really new then. Like, this is we are diving into it. So was there some kind of like a transition moment of when that happened? Did they subside? Just, I know there's a lot of people probably listening that have considered,
Mhm.
and the whole conversation, I don't want to be about pivoting in your business, but I just find this really fascinating.
Sure.
So this jump to this new
Mhm.
business, is there an element where it's like, hey, this other thing is sustainable, so we're going to switch over? Or is it just like, nope, like I'm leaving this because I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing? Like there's, and something I will say too, like as I'm talking to you, because this is actually one of the first times, or this is the first time that we've
Yeah.
chatted before. And I love just how genuine you are to like, nope, like I know this is what is right for me right now. So I'm going to do it even when it's scary. So I want to acknowledge that first of all.
Thanks so much. Thank
Um,
you.
but in that, I would love just like one more like magnifying
Mhm.
glass on that transition, just because I feel like there's probably other people in that same boat wondering, should I do the thing? Should I not? I have this successful thing, but my heart's not in it. What that looks like.
There was no transition, but that was not my intention. So, the second business was grown in partnership with a business partner. So I
Mm,
realized I finally said it out loud in like October
yeah.
that like I think that I need to let her know that the mission we set out to create is not for me.
Mm,
This is not the mission. I'm not attached to it. I'm not connected to it. But my thought wasn't, Abby, that I was going to tell her this and we were going to light it on fire. It was just like, I'm giving you this information. Let's figure out where to
yeah.
go and what to do with this. And I told her how I was feeling and she was like, okay, shut it down. And I was like, oh, wait, what?
Wait, what?
Because I'm the CEO of this business. I'm the managing partner. 100% of my salary is now coming out of this business because I have shut my other business down.
Mhm.
And I mean, I guess in all fairness, there was a couple $1,000s still coming in from my business. We had some contracts that were still
Yeah.
running, but I mean, we're talking like 3, 4, 5 grand, like not enough to sustain what we'd built. And so, yeah, that was not my intention. And so I unfortunately did not get a transition period. It was like sink or swim. And fortunately, though, the thing that I tell people so often is that we're never really starting over, right? Like when I
Mm,
started my online business, I got to take my 15 years of sales experience with me,
yes.
right? And in moving from teaching sales to building this be in the room community, I get to bring with me the thousands of relationships that I built, a decent sized email list,
Yeah.
clients who love me and would buy anything I sell them. God love them. Like I had that going for me. So I never say that I was starting over because that does not ring true to me. But there was not this place where it was like, okay, well, this business is still paying the bills while we get this thing off the ground. It was
Yeah.
okay, this business has to pay the bills and it has to do it now. And if I'm honest, it's not doing an awesome job of that yet. But, to me, it's, yeah, I have to believe, I have faith that God put me on this path and the opportunities I'm already seeing it starting to present
Mm.
themselves. Some cool things are starting to happen. Not as fast as I would like, of course, but so no, I wish I could say that there was this like great transition period, like there was from my full-time job to my business, right? Like I
Yeah.
never needed my business to be sustainable until it was making enough cash to be sustainable. That was not the case in this move.
But there's definitely like some similarities in the fact that you're like with you're
Yeah.
pregnant, right? Which I
Yeah.
actually started my first business when I was pregnant as well. So I definitely get that like intense, like I gotta make this happen.
Yeah.
Like
No,
there's
I was
like,
reading your story on your website earlier before this because I was like, we haven't met. How have we not met?
I know.
So I was reading about you and I saw that. I was like, oh, that's fun. But yeah, it was same thing. You've got a time bomb attached to your body that's
Yes,
like, make it
exactly.
work.
And then at the same time, like this kind of pressure. And I think that why I wanted to dig into that, and thank you for being so
Of
transparent.
course.
Like I think why I wanted to dig into it is because, like I told you before we even started chatting, so much of what I want this show to be is to get into just like that raw, real emotion. And I think there's a major theme here that it's like, hey, there is always some kind of external pressure
Totally.
that's saying, and like doubts even, that's like, whew, got to make this work. This has got to come together. There's a time, there's this, there's that. And so one of the things that I truly believe, and I love for us to dig into this a little bit, is that one of the ways that you can power through that and really pivot and mold and like figure out the right path is through community. And that's what you're building, and it's so beautiful. So maybe just tell me a little bit about like this community that you're building,
Mm-hmm.
what it is that is unique about it, because and why it fills a void that you see in a lot of communities in general.
Yeah, great question. So the reason that I created my own community and didn't just join another one, because yes, I'm an entrepreneur at heart, but I'm also not a proud person. Like if it had existed somewhere else, I would have just joined that. But so many communities I saw, Abby, were either A, banded by income, right? So there's a lot of like the communities that you have to make X amount of money to get into, right? B, there's also communities that like we get siloed out, right? It's like, oh, you want to build $1 million business, we put you over here. You want a lifestyle business, we put you over here. You have a job, we don't even invite you, right? You're a mom, so you go over here. You want to build an empire, you go over here. So what I saw was we were leaving really smart women out of conversations based on job titles and income levels. So what I think is really unique about what we created is our commonality is not the type of business that we have or the job that we have or any of those things. Our commonality is, we say it's our rebellion against the status quo. It's the desire to build a life on our own terms in the season of life that we are in without judgment. Right? So if you don't want to build $1 million business, nobody's like, are you sure? What's wrong with you? Right? If you do want to run $1 million business, no one's like, you don't need that much money. What are you going to do with that much money? We're like, get it, girl. Let's do it. Right? Like you have a job, like, cool. That's amazing. If you enjoy it and it fills you up and it gives you the resources to do what you want to do. So to me, that's what makes our community so unique is the support. And for me, it's really important to me that to create this safe space where you can put down, this is like the third or fourth podcast interview I've done in the past few weeks where I'm like, I feel like we're just carrying around these like backpacks full of rocks, and it started, for some of us it started earlier, but like it started in 2020, right? And the backpack just keeps getting heavier and heavier and heavier. And like for me, it wants to be a place where you can like put the backpack down and show up and be the business owner you, or the employee you, or the mom you, or the wife you, or the non-mom you, or whatever, right? Like I wanted it to be where you could come and bring your whole self. Because again, so many of the communities that I saw were just business or just social. Or I found a lot of networking communities where it was about like passing referrals and how to build a referral business. And again, I'm never mad about a good referral. And I hope the women in our community are referring each other. Actually, I know that they are. I'm watching it happen and it's so fun. But that's not why we're here, right? There are no like bells being rung when somebody passes a referral from Susie to Sarah, right? For me, it's really about a place of belonging. I say we combined masterminds and we combine networking and we combine education, but all of our education comes from our members, right? There is no guru in our community. There is no course. There is no curriculum. It's all led by our members. And then there's the social aspect as well. And so we're getting better at pulling that in virtually. I wish that I could say I was like, we're really killing that. But I'm going to start doing like, whether it's a breakfast or all of us doing lunch together and like co-working, or we've done a happy hour before and everybody seemed to really enjoy that. But I do want to have conversations where we're not talking about business.
Yeah.
Or if the conversation goes there, that's cool, but that's not what we're mandated to do. Because I was hearing from a lot of women that even just friendship, like genuine friendship, has become hard to find.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
And so, to me, those are the unique things about our community.
So good. So I was actually having a conversation with another entrepreneur friend the other day, and it's a friend who has been like striving for this $1 million mark, right? And finally hit it, right? Like I did it. Ding, ding, ding. Like I did the $1 million. And then 2021 comes and crashed. Like she's had a terrible sales year this far. And we were having a lot of just like real honest conversation about this whole idea of like these milestones and these like buckets that like you mentioned, where it's like, well, here's what success looks like here. Like if you're a mom, this is what success looks like here. If you're a business owner, this is what success, specifically if you're an online business owner, this is what success looks like. And we started talking and we're like, man, what if your business isn't $1 million business? What if you do under that amount, but your profit is insane and it enables you to actually live the kind of life you want without all the stresses of the things that you were aiming for that you don't even know if you really wanted, right? And so it's like, I think that most of us, when we start a business, we come to this, like, we do one of those, like, my why, right? Like those why activities, like my big why, my big mission for myself and my life is to XYZ. And then it like somehow really quickly gets just replaced with a number. Like I feel that way. Like I literally have gone through because we've had milestone moments. And it's like, as soon as you hit the first milestone, then it's like, okay, well, now I'm not successful until I hit, if I hit 1 million, well, now I'm not really successful until I hit 3. Well, if I hit 3, now I'm not successful until I hit 5. If I hit 5, now I'm not successful until I hit 10. And it's like, when does this end? And at what point do you say, oh my gosh, like I'm actually living my dream life. Maybe I could enjoy it a little bit. Right?
You're so right. And you're so spot on. And it's such a big part of what we created was, the need for external validation, right? Like we are chasing a feeling of some kind.
Yeah.
That really, only really comes from inside. But as type A, as successful women, as high achievers, as doers, like, I grew up an athlete, for crying out loud. Like I've been chasing something my entire life. It was the scholarship, and then it was this, and then it was that, So I think that is so very true. But yeah, the definition of success, and it's actually like when I had my light bulb moment in the fourth quarter of last year, I was talking to a girlfriend of mine. She's a wealth manager. She comes out of corporate. Now she has her own private firm. She's actually one of our speakers at our event that we're doing, which I'm so excited about. But she was the one that told me, like, when you look at the data between like $5 million businesses and $15 million businesses, like the actual profit in the business is not as dramatic as you would think because of what has to go in place to get a business from 5 to 15. Right? The infrastructure, the technology, the team, there's a whole lot that comes in at that point. So she's like, if you really think about it, if you're running a business, it's a couple $1 million a year, which I'm not to say that's chump change, but if you're running a business, it's a couple $1 million a year, but you're running it lean, you're running it profitably, you're doing work that you enjoy, like there's a strong likelihood that you're bringing home as much money as the person running the $15 million business with the team of 497 and, has an ulcer because their life is so big. And not to say, and again, if you want to grow a $15 million business and that lights you up, but if you're like,
yes.
if I'm trying to make more, sometimes a bigger business, a bigger top line is not what actually allows you to make more.
Yeah. I think it is. It's that, is this dream that you have, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is this like vision that you have? Is it an internal dream, an internal like motivation and aspiration? Because there's nothing wrong with that. Even if it's monetary, if you're like, I want to freaking own a $10 million business, then go out and own a 10. But is that like an internal, like, man, this is a goal I've set for myself and I'm going to be so proud of myself when I get there and in the journey of getting there? Or are you just feeling this external pressure because that's what success looks like?
Right. Well, and like speaking of your friend who, had a killer year in 21 and not in 22, because again, online, we're like, we've normalized these like 10x year over year numbers. And in traditional business, like not the expert business, not the online business, that's actually not typical. No. Hockey stick growth is like, that's when you hit pay dirt. Like, that's what happened to like, what's his face? Bezos and like those guys, they hit hockey stick growth, like they hit pay dirt, right? All those different folks. But normal businesses, like your day-to-day businesses that you see that like you drive past on like your drive around, that kind of growth is not actually typical. And for a lot of businesses, the data shows that it's not actually sustainable either. Because most of the time when you have hockey stick growth like that, you don't have the infrastructure in place to support that. So while it's very normal in online entrepreneurship, because again, we're selling intellectual property and the only thing we really need is a camera and a microphone to make life work. But that kind of growth is actually not traditionally normal in business. But again, online, we're made to feel like crap. Like you said, if we're not looking to double or triple revenue every year, our goals are too small or we don't want it bad enough.
Yep. Oh my gosh. So true. So true. We literally in our business this year said we're going to intentionally do an infrastructure year. And it's been weird because there is this outside sense that feels like we're failing because we're not doubling the business. Like because we've been on this crazy curve and then it's like, and this year we're going to be steady. And why does it feel like we're losing even though we're not? Like it's weird. It's super weird. So thank you for diving down that rabbit hole a little bit because I feel like that is what you're building is a place for these conversations to happen and for people to be real about this stuff because it's what each of us are feeling, whether it's in entrepreneurship or man, like I'm not living up to being the mom I need to be or the wife I need to be or the whatever, right? The community leader, like whatever it might be. So so good. Okay. So I want to ask you just a few more questions because honestly, it's a little selfish. Like I feel like you're like expert, like communicator, expert, relationship builder, all these things. And if I'm being honest, it is not one of my strong suits. Like,
Really?
No, I am great in these environments, but I'm like
Sure.
terrible about being intentional about relationships. Like
Sure.
so bad at it. I get really focused on like I'm like, okay, my husband and kids, I want to be awesome to them. Everybody else, maybe I'll get time to you. Oh yes, I should have friends. Like, oh yes, I should, reach out to other and it's like community. And I literally was having this conversation with my husband not that long ago where it's like, I need community, but I like don't carve out the time for it. And anytime I do seek out after it, there's something that even sometimes feels weird about it. Like I bring myself back to like high school where I'm like, I feel like I'm trying to be the cool kid at the cool kid table. Hi, like me, love me, So, like,
Right.
what do you say to people like me where
Mhm.
it's one, learning how to prioritize community? Because I feel like it's one of those things, it's like we know we need, but you don't
Mhm.
really like feel it until you need it so bad that it's,
Mhm.
yeah. And then you're like, oh, I haven't built this in my life very well. So, how do you prioritize it? And then once you do say, okay, I'm going to prioritize it, what are some practical ways to actually start building a community around yourself as a business owner? Because entrepreneurship can get super lonely if you're not doing this.
Yeah. So for me, it's how do you prioritize? It's how do you prioritize anything, right? Like I
Yeah.
know your jam is you help women, start their VA businesses. And there are sometimes when you're like, my life is so full. How can I possibly find time to start this business as a side hustle with all these other things I have going on? Right. Like that's what we think. But then we find a way because we prioritize it because it's
Mm,
important. So for me, we prioritize it by putting it on our calendar, right? We prioritize it by, and that's another reason, I shared with you, our community is not your typical $27 a month community. And we do that on purpose because I want the people who are in our community to actually show up.
yeah.
And so sometimes putting your money where your mouth is real helpful in getting you to prioritize things. At least it is for me, right? It's like when you
Yes.
pay a personal trainer, all of a sudden you make it to the gym,
Yep.
when you, like it's that sort of stuff. So sometimes when we prioritize things, sometimes that's how we have to do it. And then for me, it is giving yourself actionable things to do. So if it's not like go join a community and that's not what you're looking to do, you're like, Ryan, I just need to grab like a couple of coffee chats a month with some business owners. Scheduling it on your calendar like you would anything else, right? You schedule income producing activities on your calendar. You schedule meetings that you have in your business. Like if this is important to you, is hey, I'm going to make sure that every Friday morning I reach out to 5 people that are more peers, right? People maybe I did a podcast interview with, or somebody that knows a leader of community, or somebody I used to be in a mastermind with that I think is really smart, right? Like, and just reaching out to 3 to 5 people every week and calling that like, hey, this is my time to like connect and give back and check in on people. I think that we think that community means, and then we got to like go to stuff. You don't have to if you don't want to, right? Like I have friends that, we just have a Voxer chat and like, that's how we stay in touch with one another. And when 2 or 3 days go by and nobody's Voxed or nobody, it's like, hey, everybody alive? Are you good? Right. So like thinking that like community is this thing that massively takes a lot of time to do. It doesn't have to, but that is very why we put weekly events in the Be in the Room calendar, not because we think that people could show up every week. Everybody in our community has very full lives, but I wanted to create the space, right? It's at a consistent time every week, just like you put anything else on your calendar. It was like, hey, I know that I can show up and regardless of what the topic is or what we're doing, I know that I can show up and be a part of this space. And so for me, that's really important. But then like, how do we get over the, I want to be the cool kid thing is realize that like
Please say that
everybody.
that's not just me. Is that
No. It's totally not just you. And like I've had I had multiple women when we first launched Be in the Room, that had reached out to me and they were like, I'm just not sure that, that this is the right space for me. And I'm like, why? I'm like, well, I'm not here and I'm not there. And like all these things that they think that they're not good enough to be in the room. And I'm like, whoa, like you're missing the point of what we're doing here. But I think it's realizing that like almost everybody feels the same way that you do. I just read a book and it's funny, it's on my desk. It's called You're Invited. It's very good, but it's about building community. And he talks a lot about it. And it's like whether you're company culture or sales or community, like we're building. But one of the things he talks about is like the majority of people don't actually like networking. Like most people just don't. And so I think that that's the thing is realizing you're not alone. Like you're not the only one that finds it a little awkward and a little uncomfortable and a little weird to do it. Because I think we feel like outsiders because like, oh, everybody else loves this and I don't. So there's something wrong with me. But most people, according to the data, don't actually enjoy networking. But I also find that, if you can find, sometimes it's not dive in, with both feet into some giant community. If that's not your jam, find 1 or 2 people. Like, just you can start one-on-one and then grow into group if that's your jam. I don't think there's any right or wrong way to do it. But I think it's just realizing that most people aren't super comfortable with networking. We haven't been taught how to do it. It's one of those things that everybody says we should do, but nobody tells us how to do it. or it has just this really sleazy connotation of just like salespeople passing leads. And so most people are like, no, I'd rather skip that.
Yeah. Oh, so good. So good. I think what I'm pulling out of this mostly is this, you make time for the things that are important
Mhm.
for you, obviously. And I think community is one of those things that
Yeah.
it's so important on so many levels, not just for the connection and the transparency, but it also being business growth. Like,
Yeah.
it is good for the networking and the connections and all of that. And so just carving it out, like carving out even
Mhm.
just a small amount of time, and that it
I
doesn't
know.
have to be you going to a local network. It doesn't have to be a conference. It could be a coffee chat. It could be this. It could be
Yeah.
that. It could be just like this week in my community time, I'm just going to message 5 friends
Yeah.
on Facebook and say, how have you been? Right. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. Take the pressure off of this idea that like you can do it wrong. As
Yeah.
long as my thought process is as long as, and this is sales, this is business, this is marriage, this is parenting, as long as, you're coming at it from a heart of service and a heart of connection,
Yeah.
there's no wrong way to do it.
So good. So good. Well, Ryan, this has been amazing. Thank
It's
you. I feel like this time flew by. Thank you for this conversation.
yes.
Thank you for your transparency here. And for everybody who wants to know more about you, your community, where can we find you?
Yeah, thank you so much. So you can visit beintheroom.org, has all of the details. We actually do a free event every other week. We do what we call a leadership mingle, which is kind of an opportunity to test out the community, if you will. So we'll actually kind of walk you through what the Be in the Room meetings look like, and we'll share some information with you there. We do a Facebook group called Be in the Room. And then I am on social media at Ryann Dowdy Official in all of the places.
Wonderful. Everyone go check her out. Ryan, thank you so much again.
Thank you for the opportunity.